Hey, Coach.
Who's that?
Gino.
Hey, Gino, how you doing, buddy? Good to
Good,
hear
how
you.
are you?
Well, I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. I'm glad you're here today. Um, yeah, we get to talk a little lacrosse.
Yeah,
It's
that's
always
great.
it's always better to play lacrosse, in my opinion. But um,
Over Zoom talking about it will be the the next best thing.
yeah,
Well, welcome everyone to this evening for Mendota After Hours. We'll discuss native lacrosse with John Hunter. I'm Laurence Cote-Cournoyer. I'm the site supervisor here in Mendota at Sibley Historic Site. And we have people joining mainly from Minnesota this evening, contemporary and ancestral land of the Dakota, Ojibwe, and other native nations. If you're not familiar with Dakota County Historical Society, we operate 3 sites. We have the Leduc Historic Estate in Hastings, the Sibley Historic Sites here, and then the Lashy Memorial Museum in South St. Paul. For more information, our website is dakotahistory.org. This series is sponsored by the Friends of the Sibley Historic Site, so we can offer them for free. So we thank them for their support. If you have any question, you can unmute yourself or type it in the chat that's at the bottom of your screen. We're recording this presentation, so for those who missed it, or if you want to watch it again, we'll send a link to everybody once we upload it to our YouTube channel. But let's get started. John, thank you for being with us. I'll let you introduce yourself to start.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, and really excited to talk to you about lacrosse. It's a passion of mine. I've been doing it for a long time in different forms and different ways, and I enjoy playing it. I enjoy coaching it. I enjoy talking about it and talking with others about it, and I enjoy talking about how it's connected to other parts of our lives and how this is an expression of how we connect with the land, how we connect with our culture, how we connect with our gifts that's been given to Creator to us, our minds, our bodies, our wellness, our well-being. And I know that the talk is about history, of course, and so I have some different thoughts in mind about what we could talk about. I'm hoping that folks brought their questions. I'm certainly willing to talk about history of the game. I think I have maybe a lot more to share about how we play the game today, kind of the living history aspect of it. And all the amazing things that I've seen with this game from this community and from communities across Minnesota and even the area of Wisconsin, and I've been playing a lot of and organizing a lot of traditional games, these original ball games, for over since about 2015, and it's just amazing what the energy and the fun and the laughing and the community that's come together. I see younger players, from 6, 7, and up. I see high school players. I've seen older players, families playing together on the field. I've seen elders playing, and it's just been really just amazing time that I've been able to share with a lot of people, over the last, I think it's going on 7 years. And
Yeah. So there's a lot that we can cover, and for sure the history is important, but knowing what you do today and what is played today is just as equally as important. So just to start, so maybe if people don't know, I know you have some of the players on the call, which is great. But what is very general, but what is lacrosse and what is lacrosse to you?
Yeah, so sorry, I've skipped over the part of my introduction.
Oh, true. Go ahead,
Um,
sorry.
uh, so my name is John Hunter. My father is enrolled member of Winnebago, tribe of Nebraska. My mother's enrolled member of the White Earth Nation, Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe Nation. And I am enrolled actually in my paternal grandmother's community, which is Muskogee Creek, down in Broken Arrow community from Oklahoma. But I was kind of raised more, closer to my Winnebago and my Ojibwe communities growing up here in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I just wanted to make sure I talk about that. What is lacrosse? So, lacrosse is a European word for the original ball game of this land that we now call Minnesota in the Midwest. You can think of it kind of as like the Western Great Lakes. So, so if you're familiar with the tribes of this area, so Dakota, is the primary community. Then Ojibwe came later, migrated here later. Also Ho-Chunk from the east, from Wisconsin. Sac and Fox, Meskwaki communities, Menominee. As you go farther east, all these communities played a version of ball game of a stick and ball game. If you look in the history books, sometimes they call them rackets, but there was a stick, and every player had a stick, and there was one ball, and every game involved two teams, and the purpose was to score. Each team that had a goal to defend and had a goal to try to score on, and that was it. That's the original ball game of this land. And today we've seen variations of it. Now they play what I call modern lacrosse, which has kind of been conceived of kind of a East Coast kind of Ivy League sport that we see being very popular much more on the East Coast and in places like Maryland and upstate New York. But that game is very different from the game that we play, the Ojibwe Dakota style game that we play here today. But it does have there is a connection historically. So
That's great. And you mentioned that it's played with sticks and there's a ball, and maybe you can show one of the stick you have. I know the Minnesota Historical Society, I think, has the oldest found stick of lacrosse, which was found here in today Minnesota today. So that's it goes way back, especially in this region.
that's right. So this is let's see, try to get a good view here. This is the hoop, the top part of the stick. You can see the handle here. There's my hand for scale. It's quite a bit longer than my arm. This is anywhere from 3 inches diameter. We use like a tennis ball as an example. A tennis ball fits in here pretty snugly. Room to move around, obviously, but not much larger. So this was made by a Ho-Chunk Nation member from Wisconsin. Very wonderful stick maker. I've got different versions made by different folks. So you can see this is from a gentleman that lives here, but his family resides from Le Coudray in Wisconsin. Here's that Dakota stick I showed you. Here's a Red Lake stick, Pete Neto. So some of them have these maker's marks on them. Some of them do not. And this is in contrast to, let's see if I can if anyone recognizes this a little bit more. So this is an Iroquois version stick, and this is made by a famous Iroquois stick maker. This would be upstate New York. So this is Eastern Great Lakes, St. Lawrence Valley area. So the Iroquois Confederacy uses this style stick, and you'll see it's got this single arch of wood that's been steam bent just like the other ones, but it doesn't form a solid hoop. So you have on this side here, you have a webbing or a sinew, or they used to call it catgut kind of material. So this is Iroquois.
And I'm guessing with the Iroquois that just for the design, you have the ball can roll in the web before you kind of throw it.
That's right. That's the Iroquois style stick is the model for the modern day stick. So you can tell that the hoops, the basket of the stick is much larger.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that really makes, there's a really, that's very distinguishing feature of how you play the game as well. So how you handle the stick, how you play, throw the ball, catch the ball, very much different than between the two style games. So, and I have some slides, but I also have some books. Here's an image of Lyle Thompson, and he's an Iroquois, an Onondaga player, and here's a picture of him holding a modern day stick that's made. The head is now made out of plastic. Mm-hmm. The webbing is made out of polyester, and the shaft is made out of metal. So that's the modern stick, and that directly derived from the Iroquois stick. And often it's not often you'll see what's also referred as a Great Lakes style stick. It's not very common that you'll see it referenced when you talk about the history of lacrosse. Mm-hmm. There's quite a bit of in popular media and popular history, the Iroquois history of the game, the Iroquois traditional game is kind of the predominant narrative as far as traditional lacrosse. So that's one of the things that I've been working on is trying to elevate the history of the game that we have here, right here in Minnesota.
So it was clearly not called lacrosse originally, and I'm sure there's a lot of different words. But what would be the name for lacrosse here, and maybe in Ojibwe or in Dakota?
Mm-hmm. So in Ojibwe we say Bagadawewin, BAAGA apostrophe ADOWEWIN. And there's different translations on that. Mm-hmm. One translation is it means to strike something repeatedly, like with a stick. And although I haven't heard a definitive translation of it. In Dakota, and I'm not Dakota, I'm really a player and a coach, but I'll give it a try. So in Dakota, we say Tecopsey Choppy. And that, the first part, the ka, it's related to tapa, which is the Dakota word for ball. And psicha is PSICA. Psicha means to actually make something bounce or hop. And then the P at the end just refers to they play or they do. It's just the plural form. So Tecopsey Choppy means to make a ball bounce or jump. And so that's the translation of the Dakota word. And in Ho-Chunk, we say Chapnakisik, or sometimes it's shortened to just say Chapna. Mm-hmm. So that's CAABNA, Chapna. Here's actually a hide ball that's actually been busted. So the fur, the unfinished hide, so the fur was kept on the one side of the hide, and then the other side was scraped clean, and then the fur was folded inside the ball. Now this ball has actually broken open to show the fur on the inside, so that it's hard to see in the camera, but the
Well, that gives a good idea.
this here's the fur that,
Mhm.
and this is opened up here on a seam right here, and then this side is what it would look like if it was all in one piece. So it makes for if you do it right, you can get quite a bit of density and weight into here, but you have to, it takes practice to do that. You know, one of the things you want to avoid is making a ball that's too light. Light
Mhm.
balls that don't have weight are hard to play with. Here's an example of a wooden ball. That last ball was made by a guy from Red Lake, and this is made by a guy from Fond du Lac, Thomas. It's a wonderful stick maker, a great guy, and he has made. This is if you can see it here, there's small holes
Mhm.
in the ball, and that has the effect of making the ball whistle as it moves through the
Oh.
air. So this is an Ojibwe style whistling ball, and it's solid wood, fun to play with.
And was it traditionally like part of the game to first make the equipment and the sticks and each player, or is it more the whole community could pitch in and make all the sticks for the teams?
Yeah, I've heard different stories. There's an elder from actually from Oneida, from Green Bay, who talked about when they settled in because of treaty and land removals, they found themselves from New York here in Wisconsin. They didn't have any. They wanted to play lacrosse like they had done back home, but they didn't have any stick makers, or they didn't have access to the ability to get sticks with the folks that were Oneida there in Green Bay. They were recent to the area, and so what they did is they went to local Potawatomi or Menominee stick maker, and they procured Great Lakes style sticks and played with the Great Lakes style sticks, even though they were Oneida, they were Iroquois. They actually used the Great Lakes style sticks. So and this was back in the 40s or 50s, or perhaps a little earlier. And so, that's the tradition that we have today, is that there's community stick makers who are very talented and very good at making sticks, and a lot of folks are able to procure sticks from them. But we, as a group that I organize, as a youth group I also teach stick making to youth whenever I can, so that they understand that connection between the land, the trees, and the sticks in the game. These aren't things you can go get at Walmart. These are all, we regard them as having special properties, or having spirit, having an energy of their own, these sticks. So one of the ways you can learn about that is by learning about the process of making sticks. So
Different
yeah.
skills than playing. I imagine not every player probably have the skills to make a stick, and
Mhm. And if you
that's
think
really
about it, stick making back in the day, this was our technology. These ash trees that were used to make sticks, they were also used to make a lot of other things that we use in our day to day, and we still do. Snowshoes, bows, bow and arrows, many tools. So, still today when we harvest rice, you have to know how to cut and carve wood for poling, or to make knockers. And you have to not just understand how to, how to work with wood, but you have to understand the difference in the species of wood. That the ash tree is known for its strength and its straight grain. And this gentleman, Dave Butler, he actually, what's really neat about his sticks is that he actually keeps like a live edge on the outside of his stick. So this darker area, you can see it's, this is actually part of the very, very inner bark. And so when you look at his sticks, you know exactly what part of the tree that they came from, because he carves them all by hand and leaves this kind of live edge or this inner bark on them. And so you can see this was the outer part of the tree, and the stick, it, you know, the strength of it comes from following the grain. And so you can see that actually in the you can actually visually see it in each of his sticks that you get. You know, you can see that how the grain you know, extends down the long end. I can follow from the very tip of this hoop, which is inside here. I can follow the single band all the way down to the very tip of the stick. And that's how, you know, that's one of the secrets to making really strong and really light sticks. These sticks aren't heavy, and they're incredibly strong.
So like you were saying, there's a connection to the earth and to the elements when you play. So there's a spiritual element in the game that's lost in modern lacrosse. I don't know if because you yourself played, I believe, modern lacrosse before diving into traditional lacrosse. And did you feel a difference when you transitioned to learning and the whole history behind it and the traditions that are still alive today?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just feel much closer. You know, I just feel a closer connection. I think a lot of folk, you know, a lot of players also feel more connected playing the traditional game. You know, both to our environment, to our land, to our plant relatives, and to our animal relatives. You know, we talk about the other component of these sticks is the you know, these are all natural material, or most of the time the stick makers are using all natural materials. So you have you know, our animal relatives are represented in the webbing of the stick. And so we, you know, that's one thing we talk about. You know, I wanted to share a little bit about, you know, recently we had an elder in the community that passed on to the spirit world. His name was Emmett Eastman. I'm going to share my screen briefly, but Emmett was a champion, world-class runner, and you know, he talked a lot about, sorry, I don't have the different slides showing up, and this might seem kind of small, but this is a picture of Emmett and actually my daughter, and this was after the Mankato spiritual run that's done every year, and they're standing down in the Land of Memories Park in Mankato. And Emmett, you know, he worked with our lacrosse group, and he talked about the connection between movement and running, and our connection to, you know, to the earth and to our plant relatives. And he had a very deep sense and a lot of teaching about how that he saw in the same way that we do lacrosse, that he saw that same thing in the way that his running, how he connected to the plant relatives through his running. He saw it the same way, and so that was really nice of him to share that. But I just wanted to dedicate tonight's talk, at least in my own words. You know, I'm thinking of Emmett a lot. He was such a great person, and I know he's in a good spot now. But he really encouraged me in doing lacrosse, doing traditional lacrosse. So
Yeah, and Cynthia in the comment mentioned that he definitely will be remembered.
yeah.
Thank you for that tribute. Yeah, the connectedness is something that reading about lacrosse is something that every element and the player themselves with the earth and the tools they're using, the equipment is, I like the symbolic of all, everything is connected and to be respectful of all the relatives. Maybe that's a stretch from what we just talked about, but with the modern lacrosse that clearly moved away and is more of the colonized version of the sports, of the sport. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on, in the East Coast, the prep school and Ivy Leagues now being recognized as lacrosse schools, and how does that affect you and your communities?
Yeah, I've a couple different thoughts I have about what is lacrosse in the larger world, as we get away from Mendota of this, from the land, from this Dakota land and this Ojibwe land. Of course, our traditional practices are what grounds us, what makes us who we are, and not just we as Dakota and Ojibwe people, but we as Minnesotans. We all, this land is part of us. We talk about land acknowledgement, we talk about connection to the earth, but the land is literally in our bodies and in our bones. The soil comes through our through the food we eat, and so all Minnesotans have a claim to this heritage, in that way. We don't, I don't always think of people just because you're not native as not being connected to a place. So, that's one of the things I like to talk about is, native Dakota and Ojibwe people for sure, but all Minnesotans have a right to learn about the history, learn about the heritage, and feel connected to it, and feel a sense of pride about it. I mean, this is this game, this style of game is our game, is the game of this land, and we should be proud of that. And we can go anywhere on any lacrosse field, anywhere in the country, and we don't have to play second fiddle to anybody, because this was our game and we played it for 500 years, 700 years, a millennia, and we played it right here. There's still old ball fields that are not far from here, and if you go to Sisseton, and talk with folks there, there's old ball fields up there. We have just some of the only places that I know that are named, that have English translations for old ball fields, are right within an hour's drive from here. So if you think of Lacrosse, Wisconsin, that is not a word that was given by Europeans. That's a translation of the original Dakota word for that land. It was called Tecopsicah Tinta and Tecopsicah Wakpa. That's the Lacrosse River and Lacrosse Prairie, because it was a famous lacrosse ball field. And now it's called Lacrosse, Wisconsin. So if you go to Ball Club, if you go up on the Leech Lake Reservation, they have Ball Club Lake and the village of Ball Club. There's even another Ball Club Lake up in the Arrowhead. So I've looked for other place names in other states, and I haven't found any. So we have this pride. I mean, this is it. This is ground zero for this ball game. It's the original team sport of the land, and we have to overcome these other ideas of this East Coast and prep school stuff, and it's fine. We'll certainly give them credit. I got lots of love for our Iroquois relatives, and certainly the Iroquois friends and elders have helped me out a lot. But we have our own claim to this Western Great Lakes. The game tells us who we are. It tells us where we're going. It tells us where we're come. We're people of the woodlands. Of the West Great Lakes woodlands and Great Lakes area, and we always will be, and that's how this game is going to be carried on. So, I always encourage people, and, if you have a chance to travel and go see lacrosse elsewhere, talk about the Dakota style game, talk about the Ojibwe style game, bring a stick if you have one, and, share that, because it puts us in a place, it tells, and it helps others tell about where we come from and where we're going. So, but does anyone know what's happening in 2028? So 2028, so that's what, 6 years, 7 years from now.
Yeah.
So in 2028, the Iroquois Confederacy may or may not, and probably may be making an Olympic bid
Wow.
to represent themselves on the world stage in the Olympics. And why they can do that is because they have organized and adopted, and as part of their culture, they've adopted the modern stick game, and it's coexisted with the traditional game, and they've become dominant players on the world stage, and have been for over 30 years now, 40 years, since the 1980s. They've been playing and beating the pants off the United States national teams, the Canadian national teams. And you're talking about a tribe that's, population size is tiny compared to these great nations. And it's really amazing. So I encourage everybody, not to get off my high horse about the Great Lakes game. Our success, I think, or my success in trying to elevate the Great Lakes game has partly been carried on by the success of the Iroquois Nationals, and this guy Lyle Thompson, who is considered the world's greatest lacrosse player, and he's Onondaga. And so, like I tell the younger folks, the LeBron James, the Michael Jordans of lacrosse, they're native, and we have a lot. We should be proud of that. And so I'm really proud to share their story of the Iroquois Nationals. And here's a great book that's written by a native author, and it talks about the connection between lacrosse and sovereignty, which is a whole other topic. But it's not. It's talk about Olympics. You're talking about competing as a sovereign nation. So.
What is the author, so I can just write it in the chat?
Alan Downey. Sorry, he's a professor, and he wrote. It's a fascinating story, because it talks about how the Iroquois nation developed lacrosse as an expression of sovereignty, and he also talks about how lacrosse was used in residential schools in Canada, which is very different than how residential schools were done in Minnesota or in the United States. So I know there's this thing that residential schools right now in the news. It's a very timely book to read about residential schools also. So Creator's Game by Alan Downey. It's not about the Great Lakes game, it's about the Iroquois game. But
And
speaking
I believe
of,
that, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I believe that the player you mentioned was wearing, for the discoveries that were made in the Canadian residential school, was wearing orange ribbon in his hair to honor and commemorate the children that were lost. So that's very timely, like you said, and something to work on and pass the trauma of those residential school for those who were affected and by them, for sure.
There's not a lot written about the Great Lakes game, so I encourage everybody to do their own history. A lot of the oral history, it needs to be needs to be recorded. Something I'd hope to do someday. But that's not to say that it's not. When you look, it's everywhere that you look, in the history books, in the descriptions by the missionaries, by the the military explorers, the settler colonists. It's mentioned in every book about this land. And so books that you may, this is a book that was published by the Minnesota History Society back in the late 1800s, and very old, well-known book. And there's three great references to the Dakota and the Ojibwe game, in this book. So it's, a lot of people, read these histories and they're focusing on the ceremonies and the treaties and stuff like that. But if you look beyond those, you'll find the game was mentioned, in every single way. Thomas Venham is kind of considered one of the only person to really write a book that was solely about kind of traditional Ojibwe lacrosse. And he wrote, he was an ethnographer that wrote about, he was non-Indian, and he wrote about Ojibwe ceremonial drum songs and stuff like that. And then he got into lacrosse. So, but not native. Charles Eastman wrote a fantastic account of a game in his book titled Indian Boyhood. There's a chapter called Midsummer's Feast, and he actually describes how he received his Dakota name through a lacrosse game. So any chance that you have to read anything about the Dakota Ojibwe people, I encourage you to always check out what they talk about lacrosse. But even more so, go play it, go talk with community members. It's meant to be played, and it's meant to get people talking. So please don't sit at home reading books. Grab a stick and get out in the field. Do you have any questions so far?
We had one earlier about someone from Nebraska asking if saying that lacrosse bears similarities to Irish hurling, and if you know anything about the ties between the two sports.
I don't. I've heard that before, and I appreciate the mention of that. The World Federation Lacrosse Championships, which is how lacrosse is done, elite lacrosse is done, because it's not an Olympic sport right now. 2028 it'll be an Olympic sport, but right now, since it's not officially included in lacrosse, they do these world championships, and next year it's going to be held in Limerick, Ireland. And I'm so excited to see the Irish heritage and talk about, hopefully they will talk about the connections between the two games, between hurling and our lacrosse game. I've only seen one hurling game on TV once, and it was for a very short moment, but I've had other people other traditional players tell me that once, when they had talked, met some other Irish people from Ireland, that they like to talk of that connection. So I don't know the exact connection.
But it's exciting, and there's opportunity to learn more during those world championships. And
it's gonna be great.
And then Jonathan is asking, as someone who has watched a modern game, is there more or less slashing, hitting in the traditional game?
Yeah. So now let's talk about some fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the physicality, right? So the big difference, so obviously we talk about the sticks, right? And the differences between the sticks. So one thing I'll just mention about the modern sticks is the way that they're shaped, and the ball is, besides, we don't play with a traditional wooden ball very much, but they may be just as heavy and dangerous. But the modern lacrosse ball is a hard rubber. It's very heavy, kind of like a hockey puck, maybe a little less dense, a little bit more bounce. but it's pretty solid. And if you think about, if you're understanding of basic physics, and you extend that stick out, off of your arm, and you're creating that extra leverage, that lever, and pro lacrosse players can throw a lacrosse ball, over 100 miles an hour. So it's, in that sense, that stick adds, the modern stick does have a certain other added element to it. And so you really do have to wear protection when you're playing the modern game. The helmets are really to protect your head from getting hit with a ball, and less from getting slashed or hit in the head. And it's certainly, as you go into elite college and elite pro leagues, there's very little contact to the head. So in fact, even in the pro leagues, they quit wearing shoulder pads, and very few of them wear, large, pads over the shoulder, over the arms, and mostly they wear helmets and very thick gloves. So the hands do get a lot of contact, because it's kind of considered part of the stick. So when players check each other, stick to stick, they'll go for the hands, or it's considered fair game. Now, when we play traditional lacrosse, the way that I teach it and the way that I facilitate it is really understanding the relationship between the players, and it really comes from this teaching that, because the game is kind of regarded in some communities, it has a spiritual aspect, that anytime that you take the field for whatever reason, that there's something more that's going on than just, a couple of people, running around in the grass. And we have to be in the right, we have a responsibility. Each player has a responsibility, and this is more for adults, and maybe more for men. I'm just gonna make a broad characterization there, but one of the teachings with the traditional game is that how you are on the field is how you are going to be for the rest of your life, or how it becomes the essence of who you are. And so another way to say that is, and sometimes we kind of talk about this in sports in general, like, oh, I don't like playing with that guy, he's a hothead, but it's a little bit more than that. And it's saying that, that effort, that respect that you have for your other player, for the stick, for the field, that is how you carry yourself up in the rest of your life. So that we can never just go onto the field and not be present, not be connected. You can't be mindless. You can't be without your spirit. You have to be connected, and you have to play in that connected way, because if you don't, you have the possibility that you're gonna continue your life like that off of the field. So this is a teaching that we have, when we talk with players, and it becomes kind of a foundation when we start to have those other conversations about, well, how hard can I hit this other player? That's certainly a question you got to answer. I'm not saying let's be
Right.
practical here. We have very practical answers, but it's good to have those foundations of why do we say, well, when we talk about hitting, why do we talk about it in this way? So one of the things we talk about with contact, and a lot of players love contact on the field. I like contact on the field, but one of the basic things is just, kind of the golden rule, treat the other player how you would like to be treated. In its most extreme form, sometimes we call that eye for an eye.
Mhm.
But so you don't, be ready. Anything can happen on the field. I've seen players get pretty bloody. I've seen players take hits to the head. in traditional games, but I've seen it quite the opposite too. In fact, I think some of the most skilled players are the players that figure out how to have the least body contact, and they're able to kind of weave, in between the other players without even touching them, or do a stick check, just simply do stick to stick contact, almost surgical, they just, without making any kind of body contact. So it's very interesting how the choreograph happens. And that's the beauty of it. Your personality comes out in how you play and how you shoot the ball and how you celebrate and how you're a teammate. And that's kind of the beauty of all sports, right?
Yeah, and I'm guessing the Indigenous players that play in modern lacrosse teams that are probably not non-native, they probably bring those lessons with them even when playing modern lacrosse. You would agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lyle Thompson, if you have a chance to talk to, listen to some of those pro players, and they talk about, it's more than a game. I imagine that they have teachings from Iroquois Nation that are, or Onondaga teachings that tell them, more about the connection, how it really is, has spiritual connections. But yeah, no, I mean, in the traditional game, I have a video I could share of a game.
Yeah.
If I've been talking a lot, so if you have any questions, you get me to stop
No,
blabbing
that's
on.
great. And yes,
Let-
for people, if they yeah, ask more questions, we got some time.
So let me share my screen here.
Yes.
So I'm going to show you. This is what we call a community game. It's not a competitive game. It's a co-ed game. It's not meant to be extremely physical. Some of the rules that we have, the main rule is you cannot touch the ball with your hand. Everything, any other rule is up to interpretation. And really what we say, it's the two teams come together. So we have some protocols, like if you were to have two teams that never played before, or even a group of folks that have played a lot, but you're going to divide up into two teams, you always come together in the beginning of the field. And although we don't really necessarily use refs, we prefer that it's kind of like call your own foul. This idea that each player has that responsibility to be accountable to themselves and to other people. So we have the two teams come together before the game, and they may discuss particular rules that may pertain to that one game. So for example, when we play co-ed games, one of the rules that we have is that when men playing against, as you're squaring off with a player from the other team, if it's a man and two men, they can have as much body contact. But if it's a female and a male that are playing defense and offense, then the male player does not initiate body contact. You can do stick checks. Basically, you just try to stay in front of the other player. However, the female, the woman player can initiate contact as they want, or they will, but you cannot simply reciprocate, or you have to be, that's that whole kind of respect. So anyway, this is a co-ed game. It's a community game. It's meant to be fun. I'm going to share my screen now. Oh, darn it. Hold on. Trying to make the screen bigger. Here we go. I was gonna have, sorry folks, you're gonna have to squint a little bit. I'll quit messing with it. It's a short video.
Respect your elders. You got time, man. You got time. Go. Right here. Oh. Here. Shoot. You got it. Nice. Good scoop. Take two. Take two. He's really playing. Oh, God. Oh.
Okay.
It's good to see a live example of it. And is this part of Twin Cities Native Lacrosse that you
Yep.
co-founded? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. That was an example of the goal post. So we use a single post. Some communities use two posts, or some people use they'll make kind of a goal out of a bent hoop. But yeah, Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Our website's not up yet. We're gonna be doing an event tomorrow called the Wamni Falling Water Festival, which is hosted by Minneapolis Parks and Rec. It's near St. Anthony, by the Stone Arch Bridge, so right by downtown Minneapolis, Stone Arch Bridge, and I think the little park is called Father Hennepin Park. So we'll be there tomorrow from 1 to 5 o'clock. We got plenty of sticks, so please join us. It's very easy to learn. We teach people within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes of practice, they're able to play in a game. It's tons of fun.
Yeah, I bet. I missed the question earlier. Jane asked, is lacrosse, I think it's a question more for me, is lacrosse popular among First Nations people in Quebec? Since that's where I'm from. I'll just be very quick. Personally, the few First Nation I worked with, they didn't have lacrosse as a game, as a community game. But I'm sure other First Nation, there are so many in Quebec and the whole Canada that play lacrosse. I just don't know of any personally. I don't know if you do. John, with maybe from, now I forget the province, but from Winnipeg and those areas, since that's the closest to here, I'm sure there's a lot of teams and associations. And then Jonathan was asking what team, singular or plural, do you coach and where? So we mentioned Twin Cities Lacrosse. Any other team you coach or have coached in the past?
Yeah, I coach for the Minneapolis High School. I'm the head coach for the Minneapolis High School team. It's a co-op team, so it represents there's actually 7 senior high schools in Minneapolis. So we're a co-op team. And I started and founded Twin Cities Native Lacrosse, which, we facilitate games. So we go, in fact, I just got an invitation to go work with a high school varsity program to go do a wooden lacrosse stick demonstration with the high school team, just to learn the history of the game. And I played in college lacrosse in California at Stanford University, and I'm also working with the Anishinaabe Nationals. So I talked about the Iroquois Nationals. We're actually, since 2019, we've been working on developing an Anishinaabe national program that includes, because the Anishinaabe Nation includes the Ojibwe or Chippewa from the United States, from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then also all the Ojibwe communities in Canada, or Anishinaabe communities in Canada. So there's quite a large population, and we're looking to form an elite traveling international team that would compete against the United States and Canada and the Iroquois Nationals. And so I'm one of the board members of the Anishinaabe Nationals. But I have mentors here that if you have a chance to visit with them. So Dan Ninham is up in Red Lake. He is the one that taught me about traditional lacrosse, and he does a great job with other Indigenous games. And Frankie Jackson from Chashnyapi, or Lower Sioux community, he was doing traditional lacrosse for many years before I was, although we didn't cross paths very much, but he's become a big mentor and helper to me now. So Frankie Jackson and Dan Ninham, you may see them around if you have an opportunity or see them speaking. I encourage you to connect with them as well. There's tons of traditional lacrosse that's being done across the state, and it's only going to get more. The games are only going to get bigger and better and more fun. So if you start playing now, you're ahead of the game. In fact, they're having a big game in Lacrosse next year. So summer of 2022, Ho-Chunk Nation is going to be, well, I don't know. Actually, I think they haven't made the announcement. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I heard that there may be a big game, a big tournament in Lacrosse next year. I can't confirm that.
We'll keep our eyes out for that. And that's great. And I'm glad to hear that it's only growing bigger and getting bigger. And then hopefully maybe the Anishinaabe national team can compete at the Olympics if the Iroquois national team is making their way there, and as sovereign nations, that I'm sure is a big goal for many players and teams.
Or the Oceti Sakowin, the Dakota Lakota. There's fantastic modern stick players that are Travis Braveheart, who's a young man. He's a senior. He's playing Division II lacrosse down in Georgia at Emmanuel College, and he grew up. He's from Pine Ridge, I believe. And remember, he's a Lakota Nation, and there's tons of talent of modern stick players that are Dakota and Lakota. So I hope we can all look towards expressing our sovereignty through the game and making it to those Olympics. Man, that would be amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. And also to reappropriate the game that's been taken away from many Native nations with colonization and settlers and the different treaties. So it's very cool to see. We're at the 1 hour mark, so I'll just read my little conclusion, and if people want to ask last minute question, they can. As you mentioned in the beginning, John, there's so many things that you can talk about within lacrosse. So I'm just glad we were able to chat a little bit about a few of the things that we can touch on. Well, I want to thank first you, John, for your time and knowledge, and thank everyone for their participation tonight. And like I said, we'll send an email to everybody if they want to watch it again, or for those who couldn't join us tonight. And that email that I'll send out in a few days will be a quick survey for future Mendota After Hour presentation and for recommendation and comments that you may have. And our last Mendota After Hours of the year will actually be next month on November 12th. And Professor Bill Green will present how civil rights were distributed amongst African American, Native American, and Irish Catholics during the antebellum period of Minnesota history. So stay tuned for that. I see in the comments people really appreciate it. Thanking you, John. Fascinating history and fascinating living history as well, because it's not all in the past. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page of Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. And for those who can join tomorrow, that will be a great event, I'm sure. And on that note, thank you again, everyone, and have a good evening.
See you,
Thank you,
coach.
Lance.
See you, Gino. Hey, Nick. Good to see you.